In John chapter 8, we meet a woman. You may have heard the story, a woman who was caught in adultery. And the people who caught her brought her before Jesus. They said, "Teacher, we caught this woman in the act of adultery. The law says that we should stone her to death. What do you say?" The whole scene was a setup. It was a trap for Jesus. They didn't care about the woman. The religious leaders had heard about all the different times that he had shown grace to tax collectors, prostitutes, lepers, people they believed were sinners. And they thought, if we can put this adulterous woman in front of him, he'll show her mercy too. And then we can point at him as a heretic who does not uphold the Jewish law. That was their goal. But Jesus flipped the script on him. He totally turns the tables. And he says, "You know what? You're right. You're right about the law. You're right about the punishment. We should stone her to death. But let the one among you who is without sin be the first to throw a stone at her." And then it says, slowly, they all dropped their rocks and they walked away. And then Jesus looked at the woman and said, "Woman, where are your accusers? Has no one condemned you?" She said, "No one, sir." He said, "Then neither do I condemn you, but go and leave this life of sin. It's clearly not working for you." It's a beautiful picture of the grace of God and the mercy that leads us towards the freedom he died to bring us. There's something else here that can be really easy to miss. Between verses 6 and 8, we see something twice that changes everything. The religious leaders' question to Jesus was, "What should we do with her?" Verse 6 says, "But Jesus bent down and started to write on the ground with his finger. When they kept on questioning him, he straightened up and said to them, 'Let any one of you who is without sin be the first to throw a stone at her.' Again, he stooped down and wrote on the ground." And I know you might be thinking, finally someone's going to tell me what Jesus wrote in the dirt. Sorry to disappoint you. I'm not. I can't. In fact, the best commentaries all agree we're all just speculating when it comes to what he wrote in the dirt that day. But that's what can make this easy to miss as we focus on what Jesus wrote in the dirt. We lose sight of the fact that Jesus, a first century Jewish man, bent down before a woman twice. This is something Jewish men did not do. He stooped or lowered himself, as the Greek says, before a woman, and a sinful woman at that. Now, let me just say this too, as a somewhat of a disclaimer. Anyone who would tell you that the Bible is misogynistic against women, they haven't read it, or they certainly don't understand it, because Jesus does more to lift up women in 3 years of public ministry than any culture has done in thousands. But here we are. Here we are, Jesus having bent down before a sinful woman, not once, but twice. According to the cultural context, it should never have happened. This was not something that Jewish men would do. And Jesus makes it clear he's not doing it on accident by doing it twice. It was an ultimate display of humility. It was also Jesus' way of saying to the religious leaders, maybe you're wrong. Maybe you're wrong about how the law of God was designed to work. There will be a punishment, there will be a death, but it won't be hers, and it won't come from these rocks. It'll be me, and it'll come from a cross. Jesus does something here that blatantly defied the Jewish tradition. They would have all been very offended by it. It was a display of humility, but it was also a display of how he intended to deal with our sin. Twice, Jesus lowered himself before a woman, and twice he would lower himself before the world he created. Once when he entered it as a vulnerable baby, and a second time when he left it after hanging on a cross. You see, without humility, there would never have been a cross because pride never surrenders. But humility, in humility, Jesus surrendered for us. And if we can begin to live in that kind of humility, the kind that he modeled, then we can begin to set a new tone in our lives, our relationships, and our culture.